Greetings and welcome to another River Radio Sports Central podcast with Matt Varney from 103.5 ESPN. I am Darren Kinnard, and we are starting to head down that second half hill of the spring sports seasons. This past week, we have had our traditional spring weather issues and such, but it's not going to be long. We're talking about a little more than a week or so. We're going to get into the postseason, starting with girls track.
Yeah, without a doubt, it's nearly here. And honestly, this spring has been pretty generous in terms of the weather, and we haven't seen too many, showers that have really, hit the schedule hard. This week I feel like is the first time that we've really seen it kind of hit things hard with really 3 days straight of, and I mean, here on yesterday there was rain in the forecast, but you still got games in, and right. So this was really, though, the first week that we were like, man, some of these games are just gone, washed out. But for the most part, the schedule has been very generous, and the weather has been generous with the schedule. And we're turning the corner here, and it's postseason time.
Yeah, and that's again, it's crazy to think how fast it goes. And one of the big stories this spring has been Carterville softball, has been the story the past couple of springs. They won again yesterday, beating Murfreesboro 10-0. Yeah. They have the 1-2 punch back with Cadence Phillips and Taryn Ford in the circle. They, of course, obviously at 24-0, they swept the Ohio side. Ford yesterday reached a milestone 500 career strikeouts, and considering that she had shoulder issues and didn't pitch much at all, last year, that's an incredible number. And man, the beat goes on.
Yeah, well, and you have to sit there and think just how far along in the history books would she be if she had not missed a majority of last year in the circle. So to see that come across. It was one of those things. Well, of course, but at the same time, it was like, man, she is just a heck of a pitcher, and especially I know her and Cadence Phillips been kind of going back and forth. It kind of depends on the day, but I mean, at the start of the season, it was, hey, Cadence is the starter, and as time's gone on, obviously it's been they've been flip-flopping and everything, but she's just been fantastic to see, and then to do it in such a dominant way over Murfreesboro, who's a good program in their own right, but to do it in the way that they did it to the Red Devils, it really perked up some ears to be like, oh yeah, they're just as for real as they have been all these past years.
And again, we're recording on Thursday. They play Waltonville Cecilier today, who's having a great season, ranked second in 1A. So you got number 2 in 1A playing number 1 in 2A, and it'll be a tall order for the Spartans. Yeah. But again, that's a good non-conference matchup that and just kind of speaks to the level of softball that we have in this area. That in a midweek non-conference game, we've got 2 top-ranked teams in the state going at it.
Yeah, I think there's 46 wins combined between the two teams. And, of course, Carterville has 24. Waltonville has 22. And Waltonville is one of those clubs that we've been seeing for years. We've seen the names coming across on all the post-game information. And they've got a group that's been there for years that used to being the stars, used to being the people that are leaned on. So this is the year that they've been kind of building to for a couple of years now, that Carterville is going to be a tall task for them. But if there is any club to be told, hey, we need you to go out there and try to get a win against Carterville, Waltonville is probably the one you're turning to.
Well, and, this is, for those that have been with us, this is something that we've harped on a long time. We talked about it a lot with Waltonville's basketball team. Yeah. Scheduling matters. And, when you get to the super sectional, which is where WSV made it to last year, and, they have designs to get back there this year and hopefully be able to take that next step. Guess what? You're not going to see anybody better than Carterville.
Right.
So again, having that experience is big. And win or lose, I think that this is a great game for them.
Yeah, well, and Carterville typically schedules up across all their sports typically, but softball especially, and it goes, again, you talk about basketball, it reminds me of Nashville girls. They schedule up because they're expecting to be in the Final Four. It's the same thing with Carterville softball of, we're going to schedule good teams that, we're going to definitely struggle with. And, I mean, they've struggled, but they it doesn't show it on the record, obviously. Right. But, I mean, you talk to any coach, they would rather struggle in the early going, find out where their weaknesses is, and they'll find out what they need to work on in the middle and late part of the season rather than have an easy-going stretch and then, it's the middle of the season and we've got a problem that we didn't know was there. They'd rather have that happen at the start of the season. So both these two teams now have basically acclimated, and they're saying, okay, postseason's only a few weeks away. Let's go ahead and have a really knockdown, drag it out, brawl type of game. Why not? Waltonville's scheduling up, but they've been playing tough games earlier in the season. That this isn't one where they're gonna have a wart show up that they didn't know was there beforehand.
The other team that, talking about tradition, we see over and over, you mentioned Murfreesboro softball being very good. Murfreesboro girls soccer continuing to roll. They clinched a share of their 6th straight river-to-river conference championship last night with an 8-0 win over Harrisburg. Izzy Dorr, 3 more goals. I believe that's 36 on the season and 130-plus for her career. I remember when she was a freshman and kind of stormed onto the scene, and Len Navarra, who's the retired AD, was he was the AD at that point. He's like, she's going to be something really good, and man, that has definitely been the case.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a relatively fresh sport for the area. I mean, they're 6 straight conference champions, but that's since it came to the school. Right. So it's still relatively fresh. But, I mean, we talk about, she was a freshman in, I think, year 3 for them. So you look at that, and it's just gotten better and better every single year. You thought that, the previous record holder was good, whose name is escaping me, and she's just smashed through the record for career goals. And they've had a lot of good talent. It's not just Izzy, but she's the one that's at the forefront because she's scoring so many goals. But there's a lot of good girls soccer players at Murfreesboro right now. They've got Izzy, and there was another one that recently was on a U15 team playing out at Colorado for nationals a few years ago. So they're a program that is traditional, as you mentioned, and just a complete powerhouse that Murfreesboro, boys or girls, always seem to be, hey, they're the best club in the area, and then they get to the sectionals and can't get over that hill. This club might be the one to get over that hill.
Well, you mentioned that, the younger kids coming up, and I think it starts even, they've got a youth program where they have a bunch of younger girls involved, and then where I think that they make a great job tying all that together is those girls serve as the ball girls and during the high school matches, and so they are involved, they're around it. Not only do they see it, but then they get to experience it, and then I want to be like that when I get in high school, and they've done a really nice job of building the program.
Yeah, and I mean that's across every program in every sport basically. I was talking to someone from West Frankfort a few weeks ago about just going through history of the entire River-to-River Conference in football and getting through the early 2000s and being like, man, there were some guys, and they were like,
there were dudes.
Yeah, they made everybody else want to go out and be part of that. And eventually, you see programs slide, but in this still kind of early. It's not an infancy at this point, but this early part of girls soccer in Southern Illinois, Murfreesboro has just been dominant, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down by any means.
And speaking of sports on the growing, girls wrestling is the largest growing sport or fastest growing sport that we have. And a couple days ago at Marion, Alani Mew signed to go to Indian Hills. And
that's a big signing, right?
Well,
there.
it's I mean, that is the top wrestling JUCO in the country. And when I was talking to her, I said, well, when did you pick up wrestling? And she's like, maybe 2.5 years ago. and so in that short period of time, she leaves with 101 wins, which is the most in program history. Now, granted, it's a short history, but that's an incredible accomplishment. And then, for somebody that just picked up the sport and would have, when I talk to a lot of these, whether it's baseball, softball, basketball, football, they've always dreamed of going to play in college. Well, that wasn't even on the table 5 years ago in a lot of circumstances. And so now you have that situation where, she picks it up, really as a sophomore in high school.
Yeah.
And now she's going to one of the top wrestling schools in the country. That's amazing.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I mean, I don't know her home life, so I don't know if she had brothers that were also into wrestling or what. But there's probably something in there for her that it came very naturally. Just like this or whatever. But still. You still have to learn all the technical side of it. The whistle blows, so I have to go do this or that, and just learn. I'm still learning wrestling. I've known it for, golly, almost 20 years, and I'm still learning pieces of it. If you're not in it, then if you don't even know anything other than just wrestling, you don't know anything. And then when you start learning things, you're like, I still am not anywhere near deep enough into this thing. I lived with a bunch of wrestling guys in college, and I still didn't learn nearly enough. So there's a lot to it. But when you just throw yourself into it, and you've got a little bit of just a point of reference, it's amazing how much it can click for you in any sport, but for wrestling especially, since it's such a technical sport. And just it's great to see someone from our area going to a top-ranked JUCO. Indian Hills is fantastic across the board. But yeah, girls wrestling, women's wrestling, what it's known as there. For someone to go to the number one school, that's a big deal.
No doubt about that. Switching gears a little bit, more news on the coaching front this week. As we told you in last week's pod about Luke Cooper going from Woodlawn to Mount Vernon, and we found out who will be his successor at Woodlawn, and it's somebody who very familiar with the Woodlawn program and has had great success there before. Brian Gamber returns to take over the reins of the Cardinals.
Yeah, and since he's left Ren Lake College, it felt like he wanted to take over a program again. I know he's been involved at Mount Vernon, but it felt kind of like, from everything that I've heard and seen of him, is that he really wants to get back as the guy, pacing the sidelines, and there's no better place for him. This will feel very comfortable for him. I know even though he was at Mount Vernon, he's still been involved in the Woodlawn community. He's going to know the kids that he's walking into. It's going to be like a glove for him. It's going to be great. And hopefully Woodlawn can keep up the success that they're graduating a lot of talent. So the question is just, how good is Woodlawn going to be come wintertime? But there'd probably be no one better than, maybe other than Luke Cooper, to take over this program and say, I know what needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, he won 96 games in 4 years.
Yeah.
Made it to the Super Sectional, and then that memorable sectional final with Goreville over at NCOE. That was one of the top games that I covered. That was before the COVID.
Yeah.
All COVID broke loose and all that jazz. So a couple members of that team going to be on his staff: Blake McKay and Ray Strinsky, Doug Junkins, who's one of the great players in Woodlawn history, and then Doug Creel is going to be a volunteer assistant with him. Doug was with him at Ren Lake, the all-time wins leader at Mount Vernon, and so I mean that's a pretty good staff to be able to be assembled there and ready to go there at Woodlawn.
Yeah, there's a lot of different experiences in that, and that you've got some that are younger guys, obviously, that know what it takes to get there. You've got a bunch of coaching legends on the staff also that are going to be able to. Brian knows what he's doing, but to be able to still lean on a guy like Doug Creel, who he's done time and time again, but to continually go to that well, and then Coach Junkins too. That's an all-star cast right there. If you're going to have a coaching staff, it's tough to top that coaching staff right there.
And then to have some young guys that can maybe relate a little better, understand the TikTok and those younger kids. I sound really old, and that's okay because I am.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but Luke McKay is still so that'll be another connection there of not only is it that we can connect as we're closer in age, is that we also got a brother coaching a brother there as well.
The other interesting thing is Brian's experience at the college level with the shot clock.
Yes.
With that's coming in next year. Now, obviously, the shot clock not necessarily a huge deal with Ridden Lake, but you still have to have those sort of quick hitter plays when you're late in the shot clock, and just understanding the way the game is played with a shot clock. It feels like they're already a couple steps ahead because they've been through that.
Yeah, and there's going to be some teams in the area that have better experience with it than others. Some teams, I think almost everybody's experienced it at least once in the past couple of years, that they've been, hey, we're using it in this event or this tournament, or somehow, some way your team has seen the shot clock at this point. But how much is going to play a factor, without a doubt. And so to have a coach that has dealt with it every single time, yeah, you're right, having the playbook kind of designed to, we got to make sure we get a shot up in this amount of time. There's going to be some coaches out there that are going to be middle December, we're talking 3-4 weeks into the season, and they're going to be like, I got to scrap half my playbook.
Well, I mean, there will definitely be a learning curve, especially for those that haven't even done tournaments or special events with that. And to me, that's the fascinating thing about the shot clock. I wasn't necessarily anti-shot clock, but I wasn't, a guy out here with my pitchfork saying we got to have it. There are a lot of things that I'm happy that I don't have to see anymore, like overtime games where somebody gets the tip and holds the ball for and takes the last shot of overtime. I mean, and I'm not sure when it happened, but especially in the postseason, teams would have the ball, and if it's anywhere close to a minute left, then we're going to hold for the last shot. But then the flip side, and I think we talked about this on a previous pod, was, then you watch what Benton was able to do against Nashville, and to use that strategy to beat somebody that had beaten you by 30 plus just a couple weeks earlier. To me, I hate that you're legislating out strategy.
Yeah.
But I do understand it, and part of what first of all, I don't think it's going to immediately cause scoring to jump up. Games are not going to suddenly become in the 60s again. I think that's a falsity. But I am fascinated by the strategy part. Are we going to see teams that are doing the 2-for-1s, in the final bit of the quarter? How do you handle? Are you going to do some token pressure to eat up some shot? I mean, that's the part that I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, without a doubt, it will be interesting, and you obviously will see some lopsided scores to start out with, and that'll just be because in the tournaments you got to fill in spots, and sometimes you have some lopsided matchups, and with the shot clock, obviously. But you won't see a lot of that, like you mentioned. It'll be a lot of teams feeling out not only the other teams and feeling out themselves, they're going to also be feeling out the shot clock, because it's going to be a new experience for everybody. As it just becomes a part of the game. It's not this is a novelty for the weekend. It's something that is going to be part of their everyday life now. And so it will be interesting to see just how that happens. But as you mentioned, you legislate out strategy, but you are also legislating in a new kind of strategy.
Right. You certainly have to adapt to it.
Yeah, exactly. So as I mentioned, a lot of coaches mid-December are going to just be pulling their hair out saying, I can't run this play, I can't run that play. And it won't be because the team can't run it. It takes too long. And, I mean, it's 35 seconds, so you don't see too many 35-second plays, but there's going to be some that the team just doesn't get, and they're like, we're not going to get there by the end of the season. So let's not try to make this happen. And so in that way also, I know we've gotten off the track of talking about Woodlawn, but in that sense, you might see a lot more efficient teams in that, hey, we've only got 7 plays that we effectively can run, but we're going to run them the best that anyone could ever run them.
Well, and I've maintained all along that, by and large, now, it wasn't like you go back to that Benton game. They weren't holding the ball, like just standing there with the ball on their hip. I mean, they were running offense, and if the shot wasn't there, they didn't take it, and they ran the offense again. I don't think that the scoring being low is because of teams holding the ball.
I agree.
And so that's why I don't think it's an automatic that all of a sudden we're going to have a big bump in scoring. In fact, it may not help in any regard, because now you're going to have a bunch of possessions that are like the end of the quarter where you're fighting a buzzer and that type of thing. But I do think that, a couple years ago when they changed the free throw rule, everybody, they were wringing their hands and, this is awful. It didn't really play a huge factor in it. And I will say that in the events that I have covered that have had the shot clock, it really hasn't been, but maybe one or two plays, it hasn't been a huge factor.
Yeah, and you bring up the free throw rules. Honestly, I kind of felt like it made the game a little bit better. It took things to a different direction, obviously, as we're talking about with the shot clock. But I kind of felt like it actually was a improvement of life type of direction, just because it was a lot less, we got to foul. And it was just, it resets every quarter, and you know what number it's going to be and everything. It made things a lot more simple for teams. Shot clock, we're going to find out how much more simple it gets. I think it'll maybe be a little more convoluted, but when you get down to it, I think you're going to see a lot more efficient teams. You might be 5 years down the road, but I think the end result will be teams that are much more efficient. But yeah, again, you're missing out on the part of, we'll just run the offense again and we'll find the open shot. You're going to see a lot of bad shots. We don't necessarily always see the field goal percentages. If we did, I think that's where we would see the biggest change in things.
Yeah, and again, that gets back to the strategy. We got to get some quick hitters in when we're late in the shot clock, things like that. One of the interesting, speaking of strategy and the free throws, that has been interesting to me is that teams have been reluctant to foul late when they're down, because it's the double bonus, and honestly, I'm like, you would be fouling it before, and you would have the 3 fouls that it was the 1-and-1, but you wouldn't stop fouling because you were in the double bonus. But it feels like there's been a reluctance to when there's 2 fouls, so we're not going to foul until and it feels like it's too late.
Yeah, that's something that I've felt. But I haven't noticed until you just said it right there there is a big reluctance. But at the same time, there's been times where there's other teams that do not care. And then if you're there and you're broadcasting a game, or you're looking forward to game 2 of the night because you're at a tournament, you're like, man, we're really dragging things down here. But there's 2 philosophies behind it, and there's going to be some that, like, we don't care no matter what, and there's some, let's hold on a minute, maybe we can get a stop, and then we can get right back into this with a made shot. And so it'll be the same with the shot clock and every other change to all sports. Is there's going to be 2 philosophies to everything. Even when we talk about the new football postseason, there's going to be 2 philosophies to it, and you're going to see it played out in every area of the state.
No doubt about that. Well, that's going to do it for this River Radio Sports Central podcast. For Matty V, I'm Darren Kinnard. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon.